It was just after midnight when Angela first heard the sound. At first, she thought it was the wind tugging at the loose siding of her old two-story home. She turned down the volume of the late-night crime show playing on her TV and listened harder. The sound came again, faint, deliberate, like the metallic creak of a window frame being forced open. Her stomach sank. She lived alone, and the nearest neighbor was half a mile down the road. For a moment she tried convincing herself it was just the house settling, but then came the sound of glass, sharp and undeniable, splintering from the back of the house. Every hair on her body stood on end. Her heart hammered as she scrambled to mute the TV and crouched low on the couch. She could hear slow footsteps crunching over broken glass in her kitchen. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to be quick. They were moving carefully, like they had done this before. Angela grabbed her phone from the coffee table and dialed 911, but her shaking fingers betrayed her and she dropped it onto the carpet, the screen glowing against the dark. A shadow stretched along the living room wall, long and distorted, approaching with each step. She remembered her father's old shotgun locked away in the bedroom upstairs, but the thought of trying to sneak past the intruder felt impossible. Her only chance was to hide. She slid quietly off the couch and slipped behind the recliner in the corner, pressing herself into the shadows. Her breathing felt deafening in her ears. The creaking steps drew closer until she could hear a man's low, ragged breathing, the unmistakable scent of sweat and cigarettes lingering in the air. He paused in the doorway of the living room, and she could hear the faint sound of something metallic dragging against the hardwood floor, like a crowbar or a pipe. Angela's phone, still lying face down on the carpet, suddenly buzzed with an incoming text notification. The sound, loud in the silence, froze her blood. The man turned toward it instantly. She could see the glint of the crowbar catching what little light was left in the room. He bent down, picked up her phone, and whispered under his breath in a hoarse voice, "So you are home." Angela had never felt terror so sharp. Her mind screamed to run, but her body refused to move. The man straightened up slowly, scanning the room like a predator who already knew the prey had nowhere to go. His steps grew heavier as he walked deeper into the house, deliberately slow, savoring every second of her fear. And then, as he reached the middle of the room, his head snapped toward the recliner where Angela hid, like he had sensed her breathing in the dark. Angela's lungs burned as she held her breath, praying the shadow looming across the recliner wouldn't move closer. Her mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. Maybe he'd pass by, maybe he'd think she escaped out the front door. But then came the sound that shattered that fragile hope. The slow drag of the crowbar against the wooden floor as he shifted his weight toward her hiding place. Every creak of the boards was deliberate, taunting. Her heart slammed in her chest so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The air felt too thick, pressing down on her like a suffocating blanket. The man stopped right on the other side of the recliner, inches away, his breathing ragged and heavy. Angela's nails dug into her palms as her body screamed for her to move, but she forced herself still. Then, to her horror, he bent down. A pale face appeared over the arm of the chair, pale except for the streaks of dirt smeared across his cheeks and the wild gleam in his eyes. Their gazes locked, and in that second, Angela knew she was caught. She lunged instinctively, shoving the recliner toward him with every ounce of strength. The chair tipped, catching him off balance, and Angela bolted across the room, her bare feet slapping against the cold wood. The crowbar clattered, then scraped as he recovered and gave chase. Her phone, her only lifeline, was still in his hand, but the thought of it didn't matter now. She needed to survive. Angela darted for the stairs, taking them two at a time, her legs trembling but fueled by sheer panic. She could hear him behind her, boots thudding, his guttural curses echoing up the stairwell. She reached her bedroom and slammed the door shut, throwing the lock with shaking hands. Her eyes darted to the closet where her father's shotgun was locked away. Keys. She needed the keys. She ripped open the nightstand drawer, papers and pens scattering across the floor, until her fingers closed around the tiny metal ring. The sound of heavy blows against the bedroom door made her hands tremble so violently she dropped them. The door shook under his weight as he rammed his shoulder into it again and again. Angela scrambled to the closet, fumbling with the lock, the key slipping twice before she managed to force it in. The lock clicked open, and relief flooded through her veins as she pulled the shotgun free. She remembered how her father had drilled it into her, always keep it loaded. Her trembling fingers curled around the stock, the weapon suddenly feeling both too heavy and like her only anchor to life. The doorframe began to splinter, wood cracking under the relentless blows. Angela raised the shotgun, bracing it against her shoulder the way her father taught her. "Get out," she screamed, her voice shaking, but the pounding didn't stop. With one final slam, the door burst open, pieces of wood flying inward as the man staggered into the room, his crowbar lifted high. Angela pulled the trigger. The explosion ripped through the small room, her ears ringing as the recoil slammed against her shoulder. The man let out a guttural roar and stumbled backward, clutching his arm where blood now poured freely. His crowbar clanged to the floor. For a brief, surreal moment, he simply stood there, his chest heaving, his eyes wild with fury but dulled by shock. Then he turned and bolted down the hall, his boots thundering back down the stairs. Angela remained frozen, the gun still aimed at the doorway, her body trembling uncontrollably. The silence that followed was worse than the chase, the horrible uncertainty of whether he was gone or hiding in the shadows below. She staggered to the broken doorway, peering down the staircase. A faint trail of dark red drops smeared the steps, leading toward the back of the house. She clutched the shotgun tighter, her breath shallow, as she inched forward. Every instinct told her not to go down there, not to risk it, but the thought of him still inside her house gnawed at her sanity. She crept down slowly, her bare feet sticking slightly to the blood on the steps. The kitchen window glowed faintly, wide open, glass still scattered across the floor. The trail of blood smeared across the sill told her what she needed to know: he had escaped into the night. Angela's phone was gone. Her front door was shattered. The silence of the house felt broken forever. But what terrified her most wasn't the break-in, or even the chase. It was the fact that as he climbed through the window, bleeding and defeated, he had looked back at her. His eyes met hers, and his lips curled into the kind of smile that promised he'd be back. Angela didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of her bedroom with the shotgun across her lap, staring at the broken door until the first rays of morning light pushed through the blinds. Every sound outside made her flinch, the rustle of branches, the hum of passing cars, even the distant bark of a dog. The man's smile haunted her. He hadn't broken in to steal. He had wanted her to know he was there. He had wanted her to be afraid. When the sun finally rose, Angela called the sheriff's office from her laptop, since her phone was gone. 2 deputies arrived within the hour, their patrol car crunching across the gravel driveway. They walked through her house with careful eyes, one of them jotting down notes while the other examined the shattered window and the bloody trail. They assured her they'd circulate the description she gave: tall, gaunt, mid-40s, sunken cheeks, messy hair, and those disturbing eyes. But the way the deputy's expression tightened told her the truth: they weren't hopeful. They'd seen men like this before, drifters who disappeared for months at a time and slipped through the cracks. The deputies left after boarding up her window with plywood, advising her to stay with family or friends for a few days. But Angela didn't have anyone close by. Her parents had passed years ago, her siblings lived states away, and she wasn't about to abandon her home because of some monster who thought he could scare her out of it. Still, when night fell again, the silence pressed harder. Every creak of the floorboards made her whip her head around. She barricaded the doors with furniture, set pots and pans along the hallway as makeshift alarms, and kept the shotgun at her side. For a while, it seemed she might have overreacted. Midnight passed, then 1 o'clock, then 2. Her eyelids grew heavy as exhaustion dragged at her, until she finally allowed herself to stretch out on the couch, the shotgun balanced on her lap. She drifted into an uneasy sleep. The sound that woke her wasn't the breaking of glass this time. It was the faintest scratch, like fingernails dragging across wood. She bolted upright, gripping the shotgun, her pulse pounding in her ears. The sound came again, slow, deliberate, right outside the boarded-up kitchen window. She froze, staring at the plywood, her mind screaming that it was impossible, that no one could be that bold after what had happened. Then came the laugh. Low, raspy, and muffled, but unmistakable. The kind of laugh that slithered into your bones and stayed there. Angela's chest tightened. She crept toward the kitchen, shotgun ready, her bare feet silent on the floor. The scratching stopped. Silence. She edged closer, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might give her away. Then, out of nowhere, a heavy bang shook the plywood as if someone had thrown their whole body against it. Angela screamed and stumbled backward, the shotgun slipping in her sweaty hands. Another bang followed, then another, the boards rattling violently but holding firm. The laugh returned, louder now, cruel and mocking. She raised the shotgun and fired, the blast shaking the kitchen as splinters flew from the boards. The laughter stopped instantly. Silence fell again, heavy and suffocating. Angela's ears rang from the shot, her arms shaking uncontrollably as she kept the gun aimed at the window. Seconds dragged into minutes. Finally, she forced herself to move, rushing to the front door and flinging it open. The night outside was still, the yard empty, the only sound the crickets buzzing in the distance. No man, no blood trail, nothing. It was as if he had vanished. Angela locked herself back inside, every muscle trembling. She knew he was toying with her, watching her from the dark, waiting for her to break. She curled up on the couch, shotgun clutched against her chest, her body racked with sobs she couldn't control. She hated him for making her feel weak, for stealing her sense of safety. Hours later, just before dawn, Angela finally closed her eyes, exhaustion dragging her into a restless sleep. When she woke, the house was eerily quiet. She sat up slowly, her neck aching from the awkward position she'd slept in. For a moment she thought maybe she had dreamed it all. Maybe the banging, the scratching, even the laugh had just been her exhausted mind unraveling. But then she saw it. Right on the living room window, smeared in dark red streaks across the glass, were 3 words written in blood. Words that froze her veins and made her knees buckle. I found you. Angela's scream never left her throat, it got stuck there, choked down by sheer terror as her eyes locked on the bloody message. The sun was rising, painting the sky pale gold, yet her house felt swallowed in darkness. She clutched the shotgun tighter, backing away from the window as if the words themselves might leap at her. I found you. Her legs trembled so violently she had to grip the arm of the couch to steady herself. Whoever that man was, he hadn't just broken in, he'd been circling, watching, waiting. And now he wanted her to know it wasn't over. She dialed the sheriff's office again, this time from her laptop through a calling app, and begged them to send someone. Her voice was shaking, frantic, but all the dispatcher could promise was to send a car when available. Angela wanted to scream at her, to demand someone come immediately, but she hung up, realizing it wouldn't matter. He was always one step ahead. She couldn't stay. That truth finally cut through her stubbornness. She threw on jeans and a hoodie, shoved ammo shells into her pocket, and slung the shotgun across her back. Every instinct told her to flee, but the moment she reached for her keys, her stomach dropped. They weren't on the counter where she'd left them. She tore the kitchen apart, searching every drawer, every surface, her panic growing. When she looked toward the window again, she noticed the faint outline of something taped to the outside glass. She stepped closer, heart pounding. Her car keys dangled there, hooked to the tape, smeared with a thin streak of blood. Angela's breath caught in her throat. He had been inside again. Not just once, but after she'd already armed herself, after she'd already barricaded the doors. He'd walked through her house while she slept. She tore the plywood from the window, snatched the keys, and sprinted to her car, her lungs burning. She didn't care where she went, only that she put miles between herself and that house. The engine roared to life, gravel spitting under the tires as she sped down the rural road. She drove with shaking hands, eyes darting to every passing shadow, every curve in the road. She kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him sitting in her back seat, grinning at her. The farther she drove, the less she recognized the road. Cornfields stretched endlessly on either side, their tall stalks swaying gently in the breeze, concealing anything, or anyone, that might lurk within. After nearly 20 minutes, she realized she hadn't passed a single other car. The road was empty, stretching into a horizon that never seemed to get closer. Her gas gauge ticked lower, and panic prickled her skin. She knew these roads. She should have hit the highway by now. She slowed, heart hammering, and looked around. That was when she saw it. A figure stood in the middle of the road. Her foot slammed the brake, tires screeching as the car lurched to a stop. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, tall and thin, shoulders slouched, head cocked slightly to the side as though studying her. She couldn't see his face beneath the brim of a battered hat, but her gut knew, it was him. The man from her house. Angela's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. She wanted to floor it, to slam the car into him and never look back, but her body froze. He began walking slowly toward her, each step deliberate, dragging something long and metallic across the pavement. The screech of metal against asphalt cut into her bones. Finally, instinct took over. She slammed the accelerator, the car surging forward. For a horrifying second, she thought he'd move, but he didn't. The car struck with a sickening thud, the body flipping onto the hood before rolling violently onto the road. Angela screamed, swerving wildly, nearly losing control before regaining it. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She drove faster, tears blurring her vision, praying she'd find another car, a house, anything. When she finally spotted a gas station, relief washed over her. She pulled in fast, tires squealing, and bolted inside. The clerk, a young man, jumped at the sight of her wild eyes and shotgun in her hands. She tried to explain between sobs, words tumbling out incoherently about a man breaking in, chasing her, appearing in the road. The clerk hurried to call the police, his nervous eyes flicking between her and the window. Angela collapsed into a chair, every muscle trembling, her chest heaving with each ragged breath. She told herself it was over. She had hit him. No one could survive that. But when the police arrived 30 minutes later and drove back down the road where she swore she had struck him, there was nothing. No blood. No body. Not even a dent on her car's hood. The officer looked at her with a mix of concern and suspicion. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you sure you weren't dreaming?" Angela's voice cracked as she whispered back, "He smiled at me. He wasn't a dream." Angela refused to go back to her house. After the police found nothing, she begged them to at least escort her to a motel. They agreed reluctantly, more out of concern for her state than belief in her story. She booked a dingy room off the highway, the kind of place where the carpet smelled faintly of mildew and the lights buzzed overhead. It wasn't safe, but it was away from that house, away from the woods, away from the message written in blood. She told herself she'd sleep, maybe for the first time in days. But sleep never came. She lay on the stiff mattress, shotgun within reach, staring at the yellowed curtains. Her mind kept replaying everything, the sound of breaking glass, the bloody keys, that voice whispering, "So you are home." Worst of all, the image of him standing in the road, unmoving, as if he had been waiting just for her. Logic told her she had hit him. Logic told her he should be dead. Yet the deeper part of her knew, men like him don't die that easily. Around 3 a.m., exhaustion pulled her into a light, restless sleep. That was when the knocking started. At first it was faint, polite almost, like someone tapping gently at the motel room door. She bolted upright, shotgun in hand, staring at the thin wood panel. Her heart pounded in her chest. Then the knocking grew louder. And louder. Until it was pounding, shaking the door in its frame. Angela aimed the shotgun at the door and shouted, "Go away. I'll shoot." The pounding stopped. Silence pressed in, so heavy she could hear her own shallow breathing. She took a shaky step closer, listening, her finger tight on the trigger. Then, in a voice so familiar it curdled her blood, came the whisper. Angela. Her name. He had whispered her name through the door. She staggered backward, her whole body trembling. The shotgun slipped slightly in her sweaty hands. She knew then that running hadn't saved her. It had only made him follow. He had found her again, like he promised. Angela's body locked up as her eyes darted between the empty bathroom doorway and the mirror's reflection. Her heart hammered so violently it hurt, every breath tearing in and out of her chest. She pressed her back against the wall, whispering to herself, "He's not real, he's not real," but the sting of those bloody words smeared on her window days ago told her otherwise. The air in the motel room felt heavier, colder, like something unseen had seeped into the walls. Angela shut her eyes tight, shaking her head, refusing to look back at the mirror. But the silence broke again, the creak of the bathroom door hinges moving. Her eyes shot open. The door was swaying, inch by inch, as though someone was slowly pushing it from the other side. She wanted to scream, to bolt for the door, but her body wouldn't obey. Finally, she forced herself up and stumbled toward the exit, her hands fumbling desperately with the lock.